Welcome. Hey, hopefully you've had a chance to review the introductory chapter and take a look at the slides. I want to go over a few points on the slides very briefly here. Okay, a couple of notes. Geography, probably the best. There's two things I could tell you about geography. One, it is the spatial science. That geography is at its heart concerned with space and spatial relationships. And to understand what happens over space, that geography, by necessity, needs to integrate information from a wide variety of different fields of study, such as social sciences, physical sciences, and so on. Now, because of that, let me move myself a little here. Geography um, tends to be divided between two basic subfields that of geography. There's physical geography, which deals more with the physical or natural sciences, and then there is cultural or human geography, which deals more with the social sciences. So, for example, understanding the climate of a country would be part of its physical geography, and understanding its population demographic, its birth rate, for example, would be part of its cultural or human geography. And when we look at different places of the world, we're going to be using both. So the key points I want to make here, that geography is really the spatial science. It's interested in space and spatial relationships, and it's also a very integrated field of study that it integrates from a whole wide different fields of study, including physical geography and cultural geography. But what they all share in common is that they are all interested in space and spatial relationships. And we use both cultural and physical geography in all different subfields to understand places of the world or different regions of the world. And this is what we call regional geography. Regional geography is about utilizing all the tools of geography to help understand different places, both maybe locally and, in this case, globally. So geography is a spatial science, and so it's interested in the location of things, and location could be described in two ways. One is the absolute location of places. This is a mathematical way of describing it using latitude and longitude. We'll have another module on latitude and longitude and more about maps, but another way is using relative location. And relative location is a more meaningful and practical way of understanding where things are in the world. So let's just give an example. Absolute location is using a system called latitude and longitude. We'll have a different module on that, or a different learning unit, I should say. And it is more of a mathematical way where relative location is about understanding where things are in relation to other places. Take, for example, the island nation of Singapore. It is a very tiny island country who has very it's one of the top economies of the world, and part of that is because of its relative location in relation to shipping traffic across the world. Okay. Now, we're going to be studying different large regions of the world, and these large regions, our book is calling them realms, and these are essentially global neighborhoods or large areas of the world that share something in common. Some are going to be dominated by a single country, like they call that monocentric regions, and some are, have a collection of different countries, and we call those polycentric regions. Here's a figure from your book illustrating the different realms of the world. Essentially, each chapter is going to cover one of these realms. And those realms can be divided into different regions, and regions are areas that either share some characteristics or they share some type of activity. All right? Or they don't have to be about world geography. This is a map of world climate regions. So regions are really areas that share some characteristics, like the same climate, or what they have in common is some sort of common activity that takes place. All right, so what do all regions have in common? They all have an area. They occupy physical space, and they have boundaries, and they have a location, both a mathematical or absolute location and a relative location. They are located somewhere relative to other regions. We can break regions down to two basic types. Formal regions are probably what you think of when you think of a region. These are areas that share some type of characteristic, be it language, climate, economics, or what have you. And it could be physical, it could be cultural, it could be any. Functional regions are a little trickier, and these are places in the world that are linked by different activities. Just take, for example, the San Francisco Bay Area. It and think of San Francisco and the city of Gilroy, which is in the sort of the southern end of this figure here. The city of Gilroy doesn't have a lot in common with San Francisco, but what it does share with it is that they function together as an employment region where people from Gilroy will commute back and forth to San Francisco, and it's the action of this commuting that really ties this area together as what we call a functional region. And on a global scale, we can look at what we call the global core and global periphery. The core being those places with very high industrial economies, high consumption, and the periphery being those places that provide a lot of raw materials. And so one thing we'll look at is how the world functions together as a large functional region. Now to understand, so geography is interested in space, and one way we understand space relationships is by maps. And maps are essential for understanding where things are in the world, where they are relative to each other, and also for measuring these space relationships. And we'll get back to that in later episodes. An important concept of geography is the concept of scale, and oftentimes we use the term in relation to maps. That maps have a scale depending on how zoomed in or zoomed out you are. So think of when you're using Google Maps that you can be zoomed out looking at the entire world or zoomed in looking at one particular area. The trade-offs are how much detail you're going to look at or how much area is included. So in this class, oftentimes we will be looking at phenomena on a global scale, but in cases we will zoom into particular areas to look at a more local scale. So in the next film that we'll watch, pay particular attention to how they use scale as a tool to look at the economy of the border region. And so it provides a good example of that. Here are some examples of maps at different scales, and scale is not just about maps, it's also about how we look at it, a more intuitive thing of how we look at phenomena. Are we looking at it on a worldwide basis? Are we looking at it on a regional basis or a neighborhood basis, and so on? There are different kinds of maps we will use in this class. Some are simply reference maps that tell you where countries are, and some are what we call thematic maps that convey data, and we will be using thematic maps to help understand how places are different from each other. And then modern geography, we also use tools that what we call geospatial technologies, such as GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. And these are ways of integrating map information with databases. And so in modern geography, we not only use maps, but we use the digital information that conveys that spatial information. And we'll talk more, we'll have a special module on that later. All right, well, thank you. Hopefully this helped with a couple of concepts, and we'll talk to you next time.